Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen Kanik, and today I'll be presenting an overview of self-driving vehicles. And as Kate mentioned, this will be very informal, so if you guys have any questions, feel free to just raise your hand, and I'll stop and I'll be happy to answer your question. Here's the agenda for today. First, I'll give a quick overview of the definition of an autonomous vehicle. And from here on out, I'll be calling an autonomous vehicle as AVs. Next, I'll describe the different levels of driving automation and how the range of the AV works. Then I'll talk about some of the technologies that enable the AVs to work. And then I'll go through some of the leading companies, the current capabilities, the potential benefits of AVs, the current challenges, and the future outlook. And then we'll close with a question and answer session. Here's a formal definition of an autonomous vehicle. It is a vehicle that is capable of seeing the environment and moving safely and accurately with little or no human input. You might have seen some of these funky looking vehicles with these weird looking gadgets on the roof. These are the sensors that allow the vehicle to see. I'll talk more about this in a future slide. There are 5 levels of driving automation as defined by the Society of Automotive Engineers. Level 0 through 2 is no to partial automation. Level 3 through 5 is conditional to full automation. On the left here, we see that level 0 through 2 refers to the human driver monitoring the driving environment. This is when the human is still in control of the vehicle. There's a big jump when we go into levels 3 through 5. And this is defined as the automated driving system monitoring the driving environment. Let's dig a little deeper into these different levels. On the left-hand side, the blue boxes represent levels 0 through 5. These are some technologies that you might be familiar with today. This includes automatic emergency braking, lane centering, or adaptive cruise control. You might have some of these features in your vehicle today. But this is only no to partial automation because the driver is still in complete control of the vehicle. Again, the big jump occurs when we go into level 3 through 5. This is the green boxes to the right. This is conditional to full automation. Level 3 is on the road today, and Tesla's Autopilot or GM Super Cruise are examples of these. Level 4 and 5 is where the big jump occurs, and this is when the vehicle does not even have a steering wheel or pedals. In this case, the vehicle is in complete control of the driving situation and the safety. Are there any questions up to this point?
Are the vehicles, so Super Cruise it's people, you can buy it, right? They're not just testing on the road, it's actually, level 3 is actually like.
Some of the luxury vehicles like the Cadillac will include Super Cruise as an option, and they're only limited to highway driving. So in congested cities, you're not able to turn it on, but on the highway where it's less complex, you could turn on Super Cruise. Any other questions?
I have a comment.
Yep.
So usually I think that we do not, as humans, right, who are driving every single day, we do not trust the vehicle that will take us to the right place, or maybe that will stop right at the traffic lights. How would you, what would you tell us, or maybe how would you advise us to develop that trust moving forward?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's going to be a perfect segue into one of my slides. Is one of the challenges is gaining that public trust, because right now, some people might be more comfortable with computers, but in reality, you really shouldn't be putting all your trust in that. So that's a very good question, and that's why full autonomy is not on roads today, and you might see that in the next couple of years.
Thank you.
So how does AVs work? This is the basic fundamentals of AVs. There are 4 main fundamentals: perception, localization and mapping, planning, and control. Perception refers to collecting data from its sensors and converting it to a representation of the dynamic objects and static features. Localization and mapping refers to interpreting this data to compute its current position and orientation of the vehicle. Next, once the AV has this information, it plans by calculating its next steps in the route of the vehicle. And finally, control refers to the software commanding the actuators to perform the intended action. Here are some of the technologies that enables the AV to work. There are two main categories. There's hardware and software. Hardware refers to sensors and microprocessors such as radar, LiDAR, ultrasound, cameras, GPS, wireless communication, graphical processing units, and microcontrollers. On the other hand, software refers to programming techniques such as machine or deep learning, neural networks, computer vision, localization and path planning algorithms, and robotic control. And you could get a whole PhD on this topic, so I'm just very quickly going through this. Does anyone have any questions on this so far? Okay. So who are the leading companies leading the AV race? There was a study done by the Navigant Research Fund earlier this year, and on the x-axis they plotted strategy, and on the y-axis they plotted execution. The four boxes here refer to followers, challengers, contenders, and leaders on the top right, so you want to be in the top right. The three most leading companies is Google's Waymo, GM's Cruise, and Ford's Argo AI. Despite all the publicity and hype, you might be surprised to see that three of the least developed companies are actually Apple, Uber, and Tesla. What are the current capabilities of AVs today? On the road today, there's only level 2 and conditional level 3 for sale. Again, I mentioned this as Tesla's Autopilot or GM Super Cruise. Level 3 through 5 are still in the research and development phase and testing phase by automakers. These are not available for sale, and generally, they're not available for public use, except in controlled geofenced testing type of areas. Why is there such a big hype around AVs? It's because the potential benefits are massive. Let's think about safety for a second. Every year, there are 6 million car crashes in America alone, and that leads to 40,000 annual deaths. Of that, 95% of that is caused by human error. That's caused by us. AVs could completely mitigate this. Other potential benefits include reduced traffic congestion, more time for the vehicle occupants, and increased mobility for the young, elderly, and the disabled. Here are the current challenges facing the industry today. Number 1 is government regulations and getting government approval. Next, perfect segue, is gaining that public trust and proving out the safety case of the AVs. There's also concerns about litigation and lawsuits. So it's going to be inevitable that the software is going to malfunction and the AV is going to go into a crash. And the lawyers will be extremely happy about this because they're going to be making a lot of money. Next, another concern is privacy and security of the passengers. And also there's the ethical concern. So if a vehicle is about to get into an accident that it cannot avoid, it has to be pre-programmed to do something. So is it going to continue along its path and potentially kill the 5 people inside the vehicle, or is it going to take a risk and try to deviate and maybe kill an innocent bystander? That's a tough call that has to be made. And then finally, the rollout and monetization of AVs hasn't been fully fleshed out yet. What's the future outlook of AVs? No one really knows, but here's my prediction. In 5 to 10 years, I believe we'll see self-driving shuttles and long-haul truckers on the road. In 10 to 20 years, I believe there'll be personal self-driving vehicles for sale. But who really knows? Buckle up, because it's going to be an exciting ride into the autonomous future. And now I want to open it up for a question and answer session. If you guys have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. Or if you just have a general comment, if you want to talk about what your thoughts are on self-driving cars, or what you think about the future of transportation is, feel free to just raise your hand, make that comment, and then we'll just have a group discussion.
I have a question.
Yes.
I recently actually test drove a Model X,
Yeah.
but I've never driven a GM car, autonomous GM cars. So my question will be, is there any difference between those two between the two different brands in terms of like battery life? Because I've been told that battery life is actually one of the things that fails in these cars.
In terms of just battery life, I think Tesla is by far ahead of any other automaker in terms of battery life. In terms of your question about autopilot versus GM Super Cruise, I think Tesla's autopilot is more developed, but you gotta take that with a grain of salt. So autopilot allows you to use it in more situations. So Super Cruise, it's only limited to highways and very specific scenarios. Whereas autopilot, you could almost use it anywhere. The trade-off of that is GM is less risk, they're more risk adverse. So the reason they limit you in that situation is because they are very, very confident that you're gonna be safe in that situation. And that's why you haven't heard of any deaths with GM Super Cruise. Whereas with Tesla, people seem to abuse it because they think it's full automation where it's not. So they're not paying attention, and the vehicle works, 99.9% of the time, but that one time, you can get in a potential collision. So that's the big difference between the two.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Are these EV cars, that's what you call them, right?
AV.
AV. Are they gonna be electric or gas powered?
It could be either one. It's completely independent. So
It's got no bearing on it.
no, it's mutually exclusive. It's completely separate. You could have the AVs, it needs the hardware and the software. So you could retrofit any vehicle, whether it's a gas, hybrid, or completely electric car with the sensors and the software, and it'll work. Yep.
There's no safety using one over the other?
No
safety?
difference. No difference.
Okay.
You mentioned on your challenges, you had privacy and security of the passenger. Explain what that is. What's the concern?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you can see, if you think about getting or hailing an AV, you're gonna have to use your phone. You're gonna have to determine where they pick you up, where they drop you off. Now, there are some bad people in this world, and they could hack into that information, and they could understand where you're starting from and where you're ending. But not only that, with AVs, so this is similar to Uber, you already have that concern. But with AVs, if the cybersecurity is not right, then they could hack into that vehicle and make it come to wherever they want. That's a major concern.
Never even thought of that. But
Yep.
yes, now I'm worried about it.
Yes. It's a very, very low risk because the automakers will go through all the different test cases and have redundancies to protect against that and security in place, but it's a concern.
Will there be a supercomputer somewhere monitoring these different AVs?
Yeah, I think that even exists today. So in Arizona or other places where people are testing, for example, Waymo is testing it in Arizona. So they're actually testing full autonomous vehicles there with no driver. So the passenger will hail it and they'll be inside and there's no one else around. But there's always someone monitoring, like you mentioned, which is your backup. So in case the person gets trapped or in case the vehicle gets in a situation where it doesn't know what to do, they could always contact someone from this remote center.
So it's a supercomputer, but being monitored by a human.
Correct, yep.
Okay, one additional question, one layer up, is that supercomputer is monitoring each individual cars, right? But does each one of these vehicle has their own AI inside?
Yeah, so they have its own software that's pre-programmed and they're also connected. So one of the things I mentioned was wireless communication. So that means vehicles could communicate with each other.
Oh.
So for example, if we look at just vehicles on the road today, most of them don't have a modem and they can't communicate with each other. Think about in AVs, if they're all connected and something happens like a mile ahead of a situation,
Yeah.
they could communicate that hazard to this vehicle, and this vehicle will know exactly what's coming up and pre-plan its positioning from there. Yeah. Any other questions? Yep.
I just wanted to know, what was your take on AVs? Are you for it? Are you against it? If you had the chance to purchase it right now, would you?
In general, I'm for it. Would I purchase one right now? No.
Yeah.
I do think it's extremely convenient. I think having a Tesla with autopilot is extremely valuable and comforting to have if you have a daily commute that's stop and go, but you always have to monitor it. The psychology of humans is that we begin to trust the technology too easily, and that's the reason why a lot of these vehicles have been in collisions, is because it's really not a full autonomous system. It's still level 3, which means that, again, it's not fully autonomous, but people think it is. And when they see it working 99.9% of the time, they're just going to be like, oh yeah, I don't need to monitor it.
Take a nap.
Yeah, and that's exactly why they get in these collisions, is people go and take a nap. And unfortunately, that's not the best idea. But yeah, answering your question, in the long term, I'm definitely interested to purchase one, but just not today. I have my reservations.
No.
Last question.
Okay. So the success of the vehicle depends on the feedback it gets. So the sensors are the critical components of this. Now in a state like Michigan, where the weather is unpredictable, isn't it more risky? That's why they're more popular in Florida and Arizona, where it's sunny and bright.
Yep.
The weather's better.
Yep, that's exactly why they started testing there. And the difference between level 4 and level 5, level 4 means fully autonomous in certain conditions, and level 5 means fully autonomous in every condition, in snow, in rain, in everything. I think it's almost impossible to get to level 5, but in level 4, we're in sunny Florida or sunny Arizona, it's much more likely to see these AVs.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you everyone.